uncomfortable to ask this simple question: who do you want to be 5 years from now, and what are you willing to do to get there? Why is that so challenging? Well, why do you suppose it is we don't live in a culture in which people are pleased and delighted and flattered to be asked that question instead of feeling challenged or demeaned or insulted? I talk to comedians a lot. Suppose a comedian asked me, if you were given a budget to write a script for a comedy movie, sky's the limit. You're finished. Do whatever you want to do. What would you write about? What direction would you take? Should I be? Should I feel hurt? Should I respond with umbrage? Should I take offense as if well, your question is implicitly insinuating that I haven't already written. What? I mean, it's true. When you ask this question, who do you want to be 5 years from now? What are you willing to do to get there? What's the hard work? What's the effort you're willing to put in, right? It's true that it implicitly supposes you are not already the person you want to be. Or you could look at it in a more optimistic way. Even if you have already accomplished everything you wanted to accomplish in the last 5 years, what now, what next? You're perfectly happy with the person you are, with the person you've become, right? But you've already done all that. You've already accomplished all that. So now, who is that person you're going to be 5 years from now? Because I'm assuming, you don't want to live through again the experiences you've already had. You don't want to keep climbing the same mountain, and you don't just want to sit at the top of the peak. Just saying, look, I understand how unfamiliar this question is to most people. Has anyone ever asked you anything like that on a first date? At any age, right? Just being 100% real. In high school, there was a very shallow, very stupid girl who said this to me, and I perceived it as wisdom at the time. Now, many years have gone past, and we all have gotten to see just how shallow and stupid this girl is. We've all gotten to see what she did with the next 5 years of her life and the next 20 years of her life at that point. But she said to me one day, this is in the middle of high school, none of this is going to matter 5 years from now. All these things that these people are fighting about, all these things they're consumed with, nobody is even going to remember who they fell in love with while they were in high school. We're all going to move on, it's like you're going to move on to have a career as an architect or something. And she said, you won't even look back and laugh. You won't even remember 5 years from now. I wish that were true. I wish I didn't live my life surrounded by people who remain consumed by and obsessed with the people they fell in love with in high school, who remain really quite demented about, unrequited love at that age, the members of the opposite sex that they chased after and didn't get, and the ones they did. Unfortunately, for many people, middle age is, a looped boulevard of broken dreams. They keep walking back and forth over the same familiar concrete again and again. And one of the things they reflect on most is what they could have done in high school that would have, after that point, forever changed their fate. And yeah, especially, the people they fell in love with, the loves they had, the loves they lost, the relationships that could have been. Okay. Here's what I said to Theo, I think less than an hour ago. What do you want to be 5 years from now, Theo?
You and I both know 5 years ago, you did not want to be in the situation you're in now. 10 years ago. And dude, at this point, we have to ask, what if this is your greatest accomplishment? What if what you're doing on Reddit right now is the only thing, is the greatest thing that will ever be attached to your name? If your pathetic attempts to archive and criticize and complain about the work of the obscure author, obscure YouTuber Eisel Mazard is the greatest thing you've accomplished, when you look back on it 10 years from now.
Two peculiar paradoxes I notice again and again among the small number of people who passionately hate me. And for Theo, this has been going on for more than 10 years. It's at least 11 years at this point that he's been obsessed with me. And again, he does criticize me, but he also condemns me and gossips me and, says ridiculous things he's been over there. But there's some real criticism. As you're going to hear, I actually encourage that. Like, it's not all hot air. There's also a balloon. The hot air balloon is not entirely comprised of hot air. To put it that way. One, I notice that these people accuse me of lying, of fictionalizing my own life and so on, lying about my accomplishments or lying about my relationships with women, when what it is they're mad at me about is precisely that I'm honest about things they feel I shouldn't be honest about or that I shouldn't talk about at all. Sorry, the examples I gave may be a little bit misleading. That was really true even within the vegan movement. There were a lot of people who felt very strongly, look, you shouldn't talk about this stuff. Whether it was like the question of the money, where the fundraising goes, like, hey guys, let's look at this vegan organization in question. Okay, that's over $1 million a year. What do we have to show for it? Where did that money go? What did it accomplish? There were people who said, look, to make YouTube videos or podcasts talking about this stuff publicly, they don't want me to be honest. That's different from accusing me of lying, of being misleading, so on and so forth. But whether it's something sort of factual and cut and dried like that, or something very political, or something personal, I understand if you're furious at me for talking openly and honestly and publicly about things that you think should remain concealed. This image I use all the time, the decision to wear a mask as opposed to living your life without living a mask. Okay, I get that. But you can't simultaneously claim that I'm lying about this stuff, that I'm fictionalizing it. It can't be both. It's got to be one or the other, right? Like, either you're condemning me and saying I'm a morally bad person for my incongruous honesty, my inappropriate honesty, right, about things you think people should conceal, people should remain aloof and detached about, or people shouldn't say on the internet. Maybe you think it should be in part of it. Okay, understand that. That's a very different ethical code from my ethical code, right? But on the other hand, if you think the problem is that what I'm presenting is fiction instead of nonfiction, right? That's a very different claim, entailing a very different kind of critique of my work, of my hobby, what I do here on the internet.
I think that part of you wants to accomplish something of real substance through the criticism and condemnation of my work. And I encourage it. Obviously, your beliefs have more in common with Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber. That's the number one search result that comes up for your name, by the way. After all the irrelevant search results for a chess player who happens to have the same name that you use, then we get this article you wrote about Ted Kaczynski, your thoughts and feelings on the matter, and it incoherently digresses off to talk about certain Muslim separatist movements that you sympathize with and support. Certain Kurdish terrorist groups that you, for some reason that's not explained, have symptoms. Okay, setting that aside, obviously, you've lived a different life from mine. You've made different choices. You have different values. You have a rival philosophy to mine. It's okay for you to hate me. It's okay for you to criticize me. I just think that, your critique of my work should be something you can be proud of. I'm proud of my criticism of Durian Rider. I could use other examples, but whatever. I'm not ashamed of what I did in criticizing Durian Rider. And, again, I just think you could set a higher standard for yourself moving forward here and now.
The second paradox is that these people claim I have accomplished nothing. I'm a person of no significance, intellectually, historically, politically. And yet, as trivial as my accomplishments might be, I notice that they have no difficulty. They don't hesitate in devoting so many hours of their own life to obsessing over my writing, my YouTube videos, my content on the internet. In Theo's case, over a period of 11 years. So there's something important to be honest about there too, right? I wouldn't fault anyone for being obsessed with a particular author, a particular YouTuber, a particular podcaster. The obsession itself is not necessarily bad or stupid or evil or wrong. But we all need to be honest about why. And the worth or merit of an author is not related to their fame or popularity or commercial success in any way. Let's say theoretically there's a particular comic book and it's not famous, it's not successful, only a few thousand people ever read this comic book. But I want to come on YouTube or I want to come on Reddit and I want to talk about how much it meant to me. Maybe positively or negatively or both. Maybe I'd say, look, when I read this as a child, it really gave me these ideas, and now as an adult, I look at it and I see that as a negative influence. Doesn't matter. Just saying, this was something meaningful to me. This was something important to me, right? Your project as a critic, how worthwhile it is for you to engage in this criticism, has nothing to do with how many thousand people read that comic book, or how many million, or how many hundred. It's up to you. Whether something is an ugly weed or a beautiful flower is up to you. You can cultivate a garden of dandelions. That's okay. And you can say, look, to me, the dandelions aren't something I destroy so that another flower grows in its place. For me, these are the flowers. But the paradox is this. My critics, the people who obsess over me, they claim, without ever a quotation, without ever source, they're never quoting what I actually say. They claim that I exaggerate my importance, that I present myself as a more important historical figure, as a more important political leader, or a more important author, creator, YouTuber, comedian than I really am. Okay? That is the opposite of the truth. These people are stuck in a cycle of trying to justify their own obsession with criticizing me, condemning me, hating me, by claiming that they were in this way misled into thinking that I am someone or something more important than I am. My writing, my books, extremely meaningful to an extremely small number of people. My critique of the vegan movement, extremely important, extremely meaningful to an extremely small number of people. And yeah, of course, I've met and spoken to enough of those people. What I'm doing right now in terms of the study of languages and the critique of methods of language learning. Again, like you can read the comments on that channel. There are all kinds of people from very different walks of life sending in messages of appreciation that you can see publicly. Of course, I get them privately too. People say, yeah, look, this is a really useful discussion for me reflecting on this. But of course, that is going to be a very small number of people. So this is where my role as a creator and their role as a critic of a creator become one and the same, right? The value of what I do ultimately is in whether it makes me more enlightened or more ignorant. Like getting older and getting wiser are two different things. Am I actually learning? Am I actually benefiting from reading Cicero? Now, I'm not using Cicero as an example because he's famous, by the way. Okay. Even if I criticize Cicero, even if I condemn Cicero, even if I hate Cicero, like what if I really have personal feelings like that about an author, where I can't be a neutral and objective reader. I can't appreciate this with detachment. Like I really feel hatred towards Cicero. I was having a conversation with a friend of mine the other day, and I used Napoleon as an example. It's like, look, okay, we criticize these other writers. We criticize these other historians for being so biased and distorting history. So, for example, authors who are Muslim and who are condemning Israel, but other examples come up. You have an author who is Muslim and can't accept the theory of evolution. They reject the theory of evolution. Okay, well, when they're writing this book about history and politics, there's more than one agenda here. There's more than one set of like overwhelming feelings and beliefs and ideological commitments. Like, how honest and detached and neutral can they be about these other things? But I said self-critically, I'm not a neutral and detached observer, even of the history of France. Like, I have to admit my bias, which is partly moral, right? It's like I partly really feel like Napoleon is morally a despicable person. Like, I feel that Napoleon is evil. Whether I'm writing an essay about it, or let's say I write a chapter of a book of history about some of this, or I'm coming on YouTube, I can't really pretend to be neutral. I can't really pretend to offer reasonable criticism that isn't mixed with unreasonable criticism. And that's okay. Maybe my perspective still matters. Maybe it's still worth something. The problem is when these people get trapped in a loop of justifying their own behavior, when they're not really engaged in an earnest critique of who I am or what I do at all. Whether you're criticizing my character morally, like the same way I might criticize Napoleon, or you're criticizing my writing, my videos, my podcasts, considered as a corpus of work. So again, the criteria that matter here are deeply subjective and are attenuated over a long period of time. Why don't I just repeat the same things I accomplished 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago? Why don't I go back to criticizing Dorian Ryder, Jordan Peterson? I believe in terms of the total number of views on my channel, I think I got more views, more clicks, more audience interest from the critique of Jordan Peterson than any other topic. Like, more people were interested in my criticism of Jordan Peterson than my criticism of Dorian Ryder or any other example. I believe. So I haven't done the math recently. Okay. And again, it doesn't matter if Jordan Peterson is today more famous than Stendhal. So Stendhal is an author, and I have one long video discussing and reflecting on Stendhal's written work. Okay. And it doesn't matter that video has fewer views than my videos talking about Jordan Peterson. All right. And it doesn't matter whether or not Jordan Peterson is delusional about his own importance as a political. Okay. I don't have anything to learn from the critique of Jordan Peterson anymore. Right? I am not going to benefit from getting stuck into like a self-righteous cycle of the critique and condemnation of Jordan Peterson. I made some serious videos examining his work and criticizing his work. I did one interview with another YouTuber who also, but frankly, he hates Jordan Peterson. And then I did a number of comedy videos, including songs, like satirical songs, making fun of Jordan Peterson. And I had something to learn from each and every one of those. I benefited. I grew. I know personal growth, it's kind of corny to talk about. Before I actually read Jordan Peterson's argument about lobsters, I could not have imagined, one, how stupid it was, two, how dishonest it was, three, like how it misrepresented the actual scientific sources he was footnoting, but not quoting. Like he's not really being honest with what those sources say. Okay. But I also couldn't have imagined the way in which his theory, his actual words, had been misrepresented and misinterpreted by his fans. So whether you think that's shallow or profound, I really did learn something from the critique of Jordan Peterson. And I really did learn something, and I did develop, and I went through personal growth trying to put together comedy videos and satirical videos about Jordan Peterson. So guys, ultimately, that is the point. YouTube is just a website on the internet. Okay? You can learn a lot from a blank sheet of paper. You can start with a blank sheet of paper and undertake a project. As a creative writer, as a critic, as a researcher, as a combination of all three, you can take a blank sheet of paper and start a project as a comedian, as a satirist, right? You have something to learn with that blank sheet of paper. But bro, what we're doing here on YouTube, don't get it twisted. It's just a hobby. I'm not on an ego trip about it. And in many important ways, this is not